Welcome, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all. This event is the first in a new series of events for the women's chapter called W.Talks. And we are being joined today by 4 inspirational female founders. And we're going to be talking about growing a business during the pandemic, covering all topics around pivoting, launching, innovating, and having to roll with the punches that we've all been thrown over the last 2 and a bit years. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Tonya Kidd-Beggs from STORIES Parfums, Stella Kamba from More Life Adventures, Lydia Roscoe from A Beautiful Life, and Sarah Roberts from Healthy Nibbles. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Before we kick off into our conversation, I would love to give each one of you an opportunity just to introduce yourselves and your businesses, because I think you will all do the best amount of justice to the incredible work that you do, and everyone works in a different sector, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So Tonya, can we start off with you, please?
Yeah, so my name is Tonya. As Michelle introduced me, I'm the founder of STORIES Parfums. We are Northern Ireland's very first luxury fragrance house. We're an independent business born out of my own fragrance memory. It's when I found out that fragrance had the power to connect me to my memories once forgotten through trauma. So our sense of smell is the most powerful one we have, and what we smell has the ability to move us, stir us, and take us somewhere in an instant. So that's why STORIES was born. It was born to transport the mind and transport emotions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tonya. Stella, can I hand over to you, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Stella Kamba, and I run More Life Adventures, which is a company running fitness events, fitness workshops, fitness holidays. And we try to combine skills and learning with adventuring and relaxing.
Thank you. Lydia, over to you.
Yeah, online e-commerce store specializing in British beauty, wellness and lifestyle brands. So pretty much anything around that sector that's a British brand, to really try and help all of those British brands raise awareness that there's lots of fantastic innovation within the sector here, and that you don't need to look so far afield for all these wonderful products, really. So it's just getting consumers to look for British brands and look closer to home for all the predominantly luxury products that they're looking for.
Fantastic, thank you. And Sarah, over to you.
So my name's Sarah, and I'm the founder of Healthy Nibbles. And we exist to really make sure that the healthy, sustainable food choice is the easiest one to make. We've got sort of 3 key areas to the business. In terms of autonomous retail, so that's things like vending machines, unmanned cafes, snack boxes and corporate gifting, and now we've recently launched the Insights as a service, so that really sits behind the business to support food brands, media agencies to really know consumer data and how consumers are engaging with healthy food and healthy snack brands.
Fantastic, thank you. So moving on into our conversation, obviously all of us have experienced in different ways unprecedented challenges over the last 2.5 years. And I think in many ways people are a little tired of sort of hearing about this challenging time in the pandemic, and we're all eager for everything to kind of return to some sense of normality and a new normal, I guess. But for those of us that, and the 4 of you here in the room all have fast growing businesses where you have faced a variety of different challenges, but also triumphs, I believe, over the last 2 years. So I wonder, Lydia, if I could start with you, actually, because you launched your brand at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes.
Did everybody think you were crazy?
Yes, including myself. Yeah, no, I mean, it was an idea I had. I sort of pitched it out to lots of people I knew within the industry, sort of asking almost that question, am I mad to do this right now? And the response I got was actually the complete opposite, that they all said, no, this is a great idea, and if you're going to do it now. And that was pretty much the response from people all across the beauty industry, saying, you know, we need and want something like you. And it was, you know, an idea once I'd started I was super passionate about and didn't obviously want to wait, and also just thinking, well, if I wait, how long am I going to have to wait? So, you know, there's that real carpe diem, seize the moment and just go for it. And I did. I have no regrets.
And Stella, you also had launched not long before, but had to pivot very quickly because a big part of your business was based around the travel industry and people actually traveling to your retreat. So what was your experience of that, and how did you feel when you realized the direction you were going to have to take?
Oh, I felt all the feelings. I think like everyone else. We started in late 2019 with Crete as the destination for fitness holidays, and we had scheduled a fair few trips to Crete, which we had to postpone. The first one we had to postpone. In the process of postponing, we lost a few of the booked guests because they couldn't make any dates. We kept in touch with them. It sort of helped us to build more engagement with, you know, and get to know them a lot more, guests who had booked to come. That trip, that like sort of week-long trip went ahead, but because we couldn't get a lot of people to come out with us, we recorded the whole thing and made an online retreat out of it, which was an experiment. And then it became apparent that actually traveling abroad was going to be risky, and I didn't know when we would be able to do it again. So we decided to actually move the whole concept to the UK, which I was secretly, I wanted someone to dare me to do it. I had imposter syndrome, or I was fearful, which in hindsight, I had no reason to be fearful. It's just as difficult to do it in Crete as it is to do it in the UK. It's just the same challenges. And I'm so glad we did that, because we now have UK locations and an opportunity to take people 3 hours away, as opposed to, you know, making them fly abroad. It's been a blessing, actually, a blessing in disguise in that sense.
It's interesting that you mentioned imposter syndrome, and I wonder if anyone else had anything to contribute on that point. When you sort of realized that you were going to have to make changes or were faced with challenges far greater than what you had expected, did you experience that too? Anyone? Sarah, I saw you nodding.
Yeah, and I think many founders still, or many entrepreneurs do face imposter syndrome. I'm actually reading a book at the moment called Ditching the Imposter Syndrome. I'm not in it sufficiently to be able to advise on it, but so far the start's good. But I think many people do, because I think you're constantly faced with challenges, and it is the need to be agile in your progression and your development and your response to those challenges. And I think if the last 2 years have taught any of us anything, it's the ability to have that sort of agile approach to development and to change, and not to fear change. That I think pre the pandemic, there are certain sort of processes that we would have taken much longer to work through. And I think that has fundamentally changed. But I think, imposter syndrome is with so many of us.
Tonya, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, well, just for me, right from the very beginning, I suppose I would have had this, because when I started the brand pre-pandemic, I felt, well, I don't have a story. You know, I don't have anything to give. And especially then when we moved into these times. But actually, when you really focus on what you're bringing to market and the product that you have and your point of difference, you actually find we all do have stories, and we all do, there's no need to feel that way. So, I mean, for me, we launched just pre-pandemic. We were in 2018 via our website, and then we launched into prestige retail in 2019. And of course, then we hit lockdown. So a little bit like Stella as well, we had to really start to think outside the box and really think, okay, what are we going to do here? We were a relatively new brand. We were a startup. Our price point was very high. We had, how did we get our fragrances into people's hands in the middle of a pandemic when they couldn't go into retail? They hadn't heard of STORIES Parfums at all. So we were hit with this challenge. And then obviously prestige retail shut down, and that then became another challenge, because some of the retail hadn't really focused on online either. So yeah, I mean, in terms of having to relook at, there was a lot of navigation that we had to do, and really try to think, how can we get these fragrances into people's hands easily?
Well, and to your point there about, actually how do we connect with our customers and our consumers, Sarah, you had to pivot really quickly in terms of your business model and your routes to market, because you'd launched originally with the vending machine concept. If I'm correct.
Yeah, precisely. So pre-COVID, we were probably, I would say, 60% on the vending machines in terms of the work that we were doing. The other side was the boxes. So what we found was it was really just about staying in touch with our customer base and seeing what they were doing and how we could sort of support them. So obviously, once the initial sort of panic of moving logistics and people working from home died down, then it was about how do we support employee health and well-being and give the employees peace of mind during this process. So yeah, we moved our larger scale box operations to individual direct to employees. That saw us moving from sort of a very small number of international deliveries to we've done over 35, 40 countries in the last sort of couple of years, packing up large orders and then suddenly having to sort of repurpose those into sort of 5, 6 snacks into a box. So the labor element was a lot more intense. But I think what that's done now is actually add another aspect to the business as opposed to take anything away. So now what we're seeing in the last quarter is the vending machine element of the business and our newly launched sort of cafe wellness hub, those elements starting to increase and grow as people return to the office in various guises. But then the boxes stand alone separately and sort of fill that gap for either the fragmented sort of working from home or always on the road staff. So yeah, it has been an interesting journey, but I think it's added another sort of element to the business in hindsight.
And I wonder if each of you could share an observation around your customers and how their behavior has changed over the last 2 years. And obviously businesses have had to respond to that. The ones that have listened, asked and listened, like all of yours. But I mean, like Stella, you work in wellness and there was obviously a travel element, but how has this last 2-year experience changed what people want in that space? Before, I think doing exercise online or virtual classes was something that a lot of people would have struggled with. And it's now something that just about, everybody feels quite comfortable with having some sort of wellness touch point online or via an app. What was that like for you? Because obviously you had a traditional wellness and fitness background before that.
Yeah. So the first thing we did was when I kind of, the news was announced and I panicked, and every day I would post a workout online that people could follow from anywhere, and it didn't necessarily need a lot of equipment, didn't need any equipment. And I would make that I would give as many instructions as I could. And I realized that people that I didn't think were following were actually following, because it was free you didn't need to pay anything and you could just screenshot it and do it at home. So that gave us a whole new audience. Then we partnered with a yoga teacher to do a weekly yin yoga session on Zoom, which, everybody needed a little bit of yin yoga. It always does, but in particular during the lockdown, I think it brought a sense of like, everything's going to be okay. So that gave us a new audience. What else did we do? Well, we did the online retreat I mentioned. Actually, that didn't serve well at all. And I realized there's only so much Zoom you can offer people, or there's only so much online content you can offer people. At the end of the day, everyone needs a hug and to travel, and all these things do remain, values in life. I don't know whether we didn't promote it well enough, or whether inherently the product wasn't worth the money. But I don't know if people have fundamentally changed, but their coping strategies definitely, we all had the same coping strategies. In order to connect, people would do anything possible. We got better at keeping in touch with our customers because we would organize these Zoom calls. I would check in regularly through all the channels. And I think that's fundamental that I didn't necessarily know how to do before. I was too shy to do before, oh, why bother a prospective client or a client that's making an inquiry? Whereas I got a lot more bold about reaching out and connecting, and people responded well to that on the whole. We got a lot of inquiries that we wouldn't otherwise. Got a lot of new inquiries, even though the trips were touch and go, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And then when finally the UK holiday became, we put it together and we put it out there. I was in the people that we interviewed, that booked on and we interviewed afterwards, said I booked on this because I didn't know when I'd be able to travel again. So, so in that sense, people were much more up for a staycation. Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, but this was my learning.
No, thank you. And Lydia, what was it like launching a multi-brand platform in a market where largely people are used to a bricks and mortar experience, where they can go in and kind of try products on or see how they feel on their skin? What was it like for you?
Well, it was actually quite a good time for a lot of brands because, even like Tonya said, a lot of the brands were in a lot of stores, and all of a sudden, a lot of new brands, especially all these stores that they thought they were launching in or had successful kind of consumer base, all of a sudden that was taken away. So actually, it was at the right time because a lot of these companies were looking for alternatives, and online was the obvious place. So most of them were looking to sort of launch their own website and improve their own website to get directly to consumers. But I really noticed with it, pretty much most of the brands I spoke to, they were all saying the same thing, that the British thing was something they really, really wanted to attach themselves to. So all of these ideas that I had when I was speaking to brands, it was almost like I was delivering something to them which they needed. And it's been a lot easier in terms of brands. I mean, I'm contacted every week now by a new brand wanting to be a part of it. So there was obviously a need for that. The harder thing is obviously reaching consumers and doing that in a time where you don't have the opportunity to actually get in front of people. But again, it's changed people's shopping habits. And so if anything, we are only a year old now, but we've had that year to really grow in terms of we've now got 60 brands on the website. So although it's probably not been as busy, as it would have been pre-pandemic, that's given us a year to really work with all of the brands and amend and create and adapt. And actually now we're hopefully at the right time where we can really, really start to target people, because we've had that year to really grow and establish what consumers want. And when I speak to most brands anyway, they all say the same thing, that they don't think it will ever fully go back to the way it was in terms of bricks and mortar and online. I think bricks and mortar now, if you're just going to buy a product, you probably won't. It needs to be much more of an experience, and that's why you'll go into a shop. And certain areas of beauty are a lot harder. If you're buying a new foundation for the first time and you need to choose a color, that's a lot harder to do. But if you're buying a skincare or body care product, you just need to get the right information. And that's something we're looking to grow over the next 6 months. Education, really, giving consumers that knowledge so that they can actually get all that they need when purchasing products from online. So it's actually given that year's been great for us because we've learned so much in order to move forward. So I think I've heard it from a lot of you lovely ladies too. It's actually, we've been an opportunity to learn and grow. So although it's been probably harder financially, in terms of actually learning about consumers' behavior, it's actually been much more beneficial in a way. So you've been almost made to look at consumers a little bit more than maybe you would if you were really, really busy.
Oh, you're on mute. Can't hear you.
Sorry. Many of the brands and founders that that I've spoken to over the pandemic, and we've done a variety of different conversations around this, the key theme is very much around the power of your audience and really listening to what your customer base wants and changing in response to that. Tonya, I'd be interested, because I know you obviously run a business that would be very typically the kind of product you would buy after going into a beauty hall or a fragrance hall and trying it on. How did you navigate that and your kind of refining your route to market?
Yeah. So when we launched online in 2018, it was really important for that I would always have the consumer at the front of my mind and and I wanted to speak to the consumer directly. And I always wanted to have that. Prestige retail was always important because, of course, for a new brand, it's really important to be seen in these places. So that was also, something I wanted to do. But then when we hit the pandemic, it really gave me a focus to look at our customer persona, to see who he is or she is, where they are, what they wanted from us. And we spent a lot of time digging into that and really looking to see who is our customer. And also, I also had to step out and become comfortable with my own voice, because I did not want to be a voice. And people kept saying, you need to be the voice because the people need to hear what your dreams are. So I had to get comfortable with that, and then we decided that we would try to reach a greater audience than what we normally would do if it was an event. So we started online masterclasses. So there were VIP Scent Club. They started out as. We started off with a consumer event, and it was ticketed, and they came and they were able to get their samples sent to them, and then I took them through a really unique way of creating with scent. Because I don't focus on ingredients, it's all about emotion. So it gave me that chance to really be a voice in the middle of the brand as it was growing. Then we realized, okay, press wanted to speak to you as well, but usually you had to book in a time and be there at a certain time. But all of a sudden, you were able to have your meetings and your masterclasses with them online. And so that the pandemic really gave me a chance to really focus in on the consumer and what they want and how can they hear my voice and my story, because stories is all about storytelling. It's in the name. So if we want to also give a place for people to tell their story and share without fear. And through our scent, which is the strongest of all our senses, it does evoke memory. It does evoke a feeling. So that became really evident that actually there was something really unique and different about us as a brand. So let's try and maximize that and use that in the pandemic. Also, really just focusing on other sort of like-minded brands, coming up with some sort of a marketing activation. And we really focused in on, our senses. So, for example, we collaborated with a champagne brand called Fresh on Frere, and basically what it was the set. How do you taste something and how do you smell? So the pandemic really gave us a good chance to really focus in on like-minded brands, who is our consumer, and how do we actually be able to do that online. And one, I suppose, it's the same as you, Stella. You have to actually find your voice, don't you? You really can't.
I 100% resonate with what Tonya just shared, because I had to put myself out there. I had a PT business before I launched More Life Adventures, and during the pandemic I was doing live classes on Zoom, which I'd never done before, just to keep the audience engaged and just to maybe get new clients and all that stuff. And in the beginning it was frightening, and then it got very exciting because people would join from Paris and from Germany and from wherever, which before it would have been unthinkable. I mean, there was online coaching before, don't get me wrong, but I was never interested in it. And that was, and also I found pre-pandemic I was working on my own. 3 months into the pandemic I was working with 3 other people, which was, it forced me to grow and reach out to people and hire help. And one of these women, and one of these women is still working with me to this day, and we have 2 more who've joined since. And she said to me very early on, you need to put your face on the camera and be out there and doing videos and this and that. And I remember, we laugh about it now, that I remember dreading it and doing 5 videos of the same thing and picking the one out of frustration. And had it not been, it was a massive growth spurt for me and for More Life Adventures, which was basically in its infancy before. But it would have still been in its infancy had we not had a push. So yeah, just very much like what the other ladies are saying, that we were pushed out of the zone.
I know. And it's funny though, because you're saying about all of a sudden you have a worldwide audience, and we have a retail partner in Canada, and we all of a sudden could be in Canada as well, and we could actually do our masterclasses, so absolutely. We need to get over ourselves, don't we?
Sarah, I wonder if you can contribute to that, because as you mentioned earlier, you distribute to 44 countries now. Was that something that was in your kind of first 5 years of the business plan, or was that something you were kind of pushed into because of the way that the world changed?
Exporting was of a potential interest, and I say that as it wasn't a fixed element of a business plan. It was, this is a maybe. I think for us, it became part of servicing our clients. You're saying about connecting to your customer, and that has been key to us working through the pandemic, and then where we're up to now is really being very, very closely aligned with what are they doing and how are they supporting the teams. We found that obviously some of the global clients wanting to do sort of Zoom calls, that they all had exactly the same gift. So we were preparing those, and that's how this sort of much wider distribution happened. But it's certainly been an experience, because during that process, obviously adding in Brexit and food items, and how many times we had to change what could even go in a box to make sure it actually got through customs was quite a challenge. And horror stories of entire shipments being returned and they made it to Edinburgh's airport of all places and came back. But you learn and you grow through those, and you work out what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and how best to support the clients in the sort of longer terms. But I think there's just so many things. It's been like a fast track of learning through running the business, but that's what makes us resilient and carry on.
Absolutely. Well, and speaking about learnings, would you each be able to share something maybe unexpected that you learned through this process? You've all touched on it in some way about what you've kind of learned about yourselves, and I think we've all had to push boundaries and go, kind of along paths that we normally might not have. But is there a specific learning that stands out for each of you? Tonya, would you like to start?
So I suppose for me, it's really been able to have a voice in a very, very noisy industry. When I launched the brand, I didn't realize that I was entering one of the most oversaturated parts of the beauty industry. But actually, being able to have a voice and use social media and Zoom, etc., to have that. And also very quickly, it was my no's very quickly started to be yeses, because people were hearing and experiencing you more. So really, instead of it being a finding or a learning, it was more of a confirmation for me that actually, people wanted to hear and people wanted that uniqueness. So, yeah.
Thank you. Stella?
My advice would be, or what I've learned, is to treat everything as an experiment, not to take things too seriously. It could fail or it could succeed, but whatever happens, we are going to learn and move on to the next experiment. Whereas before, I was very cautious about trying new things. And now I think, if it fails, it's going to be a failed experiment, but we need the experiments.
Yes.
And I think there's something to be said, even when you were talking about it, it makes me think about how with the women's chapter, we had to move from being very much an in-person our activations were all in person and meeting with our members, to shifting everything online. And I didn't know anything about how to run an event online. But I think there was also a huge amount of understanding and support where people were having to take those leaps and try new things. And, where you would see news presenters having their kids running in on their Zooms. And that's pretty standard now. If your dog barks while you're running a live event, people, are not thinking badly of you, because it's quite possible that that might have happened, or they would have had the child walk in, or the postman knocks on the door. You know, I think we're far more open to an understanding of one another's lives and the human element of running a business. I don't know if that's something you agree with, but it's certainly something that I have felt. But I think we all have a greater understanding of illness. You know, you don't judge people now when they say they're ill and they can't come along to something, because most likely they are. You know, and the same with just how we're operating, that agility. We've got far more confidence to be agile because less people are judging us, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't even in the beginning, but it was just that perception.
I had to, you know, do classes from my living room, and I could see everyone else's living rooms, and we're all the same, you know. It's a human experience, isn't it? More human than coming to a studio.
Yeah.
Lydia, what have your learnings been?
Oh gosh, too many to list. I think just sort of talking about the whole Zoom thing and people being real, having worked in the beauty industry for 25 years or so, it was sort of deep rooted in me that I had to look absolutely immaculate for any event I went to or any meeting I went to. And people are a lot more informal now in general, because there were so many Zooms, so many more meetings, and people were kind of just more themselves. I saw that with all the people I was talking to. So I think I've got less paranoid, even though we're all looking at yourself in a mirror pretty much all day. When you're doing meetings all day, you're looking at yourself going, God, I look tired, I look awful. I think I've just come to accept that that's how I look, and people aren't actually bothered at all whether my makeup is perfectly applied or my hair is styled nicely, that they're interested in me as a person, and that the opportunity that I'm talking to them about and how I look is completely irrelevant. And the biggest thing I think in terms of running the business has been we're now 60 brands. How to actually promote 60 different brands as opposed to just one is a whole different learning in terms of the PR and everything. So it's been a whole learning curve over the last year since launching this, but it's great at the same time. You know, you learn to take other people's advice. If you don't know something, to just ask for it, and people aren't going to judge you if you don't know. And it's also actually on the opposite scale, you actually grow in confidence, because you think, gosh, I would never have even attempted this before, and I've done it and I was all right. And the confidence that gives you from trying all these things that you probably wouldn't have even attempted before, but gave it a go yourself because you had to. The confidence you gain from that, I found really invaluable. That now I actually am having a go at a lot more things that I would probably not have, because I think, well, I tried that and I could do it, so I might as well just have a go at this. Less fear, I guess, if I had to put it in a paragraph, less fear of trying new things.
Funny, Lydia, I would agree with you, Lydia, there, just in the fact that, you know, surrounding yourself with people who know more than you, not to be afraid of not knowing everything. And I remember being told way back, or I think I read it, somebody well known, I believe, had put it on paper somewhere, but it's like, surround yourself with people that know more. Have your senior team be, you know, people know more. So I totally agree with you. Don't worry if you don't know everything.
No, just be yourself.
Yeah. Sarah, how about you? Because you have achieved a huge amount over the last 2 years, becoming B Corp registered being one of your major milestones. Do you have any learnings to share around maybe some of the challenges you've navigated in the last couple of years?
I think some of it is building on what Stella said about experimentation. I think we very early on, in fact, from the day one of sort of those lockdown days, we adopted more of an agile sort of methodology, and it's in terms of how we approached each day as a team to the business. And initially it did start like that. It started, what are we doing today? How's the media responding? How's the government responding? Then those gaps become more and more sort of wider, to the point of, you know, like we are now, where you can at least predict a few weeks ahead. So I think the more agile way of working is something that we moved to very quickly. it was, I guess, more pre-pandemic. It was more tech sector that adopted that approach, but it is something that we've taken into the business. I think for me personally, and sort of working through this, it's being able to identify that, especially with the amount of Zoom calls and things like that we're on, is just that balance of I'm quite naturally introvert, an extrovert when I need to be, but being able to balance that and plan that accordingly into sort of, I use a planner and a diary, and just to sort of build those sort of me times in, because I think otherwise what happened with the Zoom, it was sort of every hour on the hour, and they just kept rolling and rolling, and it actually got quite overwhelming because you didn't have that sort of decompress element to a life. Other than that, it was just, again, grabbing those opportunities. So Michelle, you mentioned about the B Corp, but we did find in our sort of those elements of our quieter times that we were able to dedicate more time to really getting involved in B Corp and going through that certification process, which is quite sort of intense as it is, but actually enabled us to really focus on what were our metrics around sustainability and impact, and how can we build a business of purpose, and how can we sort of bring all of that knowledge into now what are we looking in terms of our next sort of 3 to 5 years, and continue to sort of improve on those things. So it's been an interesting couple of years, but there's been I think in terms of personal development, I've grown a lot during this sort of timing, and it's sort of presented a really, really good foundation for moving forward.
And do you think that this has had an impact, because you were talking about managing a remote team, and I think we've all had experience of doing that. Do you think that this period has forced us to be better, more agile leaders? Because we've had to think about the strategic side of our businesses, but also looking after the needs of the people who work for us. And considering how this change is having an impact on them, and obviously it's had a very different impact on people. Some people have really embraced working from home and a hybrid setup, whereas other people have really struggled with it. What has it meant for each of you from a leadership style and perspective? Stella, I see you nodding.
Oh man. First of all, I think let's acknowledge, I don't know if you agree with me, but I have to acknowledge that the 2 years of pandemic was a mental health challenge for everyone. First of all, for me, I had every month, I had 3 days of, not every month, but a lot of months, I had 3 days in bed, vomiting the lot. I went to hospital and the doctor said, your bloods are fine, but you are stressed. Do you have any friends? Can you talk to anyone? And I was like, I have friends. Why do I not express my anxiety to people? And I didn't feel that I could express this. I didn't even know it was happening, to be honest. I thought I was very aware, but apparently I wasn't. I wasn't aware to what extent the anxiety was affecting me. The anxiety of like, where's my future? What's my future? What does it look like? So first and foremost, I became more self-aware. I had to do some work. And then because, like you said, I hired staff in the pandemic that I'd never met in person. And one of them was in Italy. And you were faced with everyone's, not just their work problems, but their whole life setup that was changing. You know, I'm working from my kitchen. My partner is in the next room, blah, blah, blah. Well, you had to deal with the whole person. And I, having left the corporate life, not really enjoying the office life, to me, that was refreshing in a way, even though it was hard for everyone. To me, knowing the whole person and being able to think of their work, how that fits to their life and how I can support them and what else they're doing. You know, previously in an office, I wouldn't really have access to that information, and they would come and just be all smiley and not really admit to what was going on. So I think this was probably a blessing in disguise that we all had to deal with each other's whole life. I think that's my answer.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that was the answer, but yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. Tonya, how about you?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. That's really, insightful to know that actually founders and leaders actually deal with this as well. So thank you for sharing that. But also, yeah, for the first little while, I think we all found it very exciting. You were able to enjoy the lovely weather that we had when lockdown first occurred, and everything worked quite well because it was also new with Zoom. But it got for us that actually it became problematic because I have a very small team in like full-time staff. And then most of our suggestions and creative ideas all happen around the table and when you're sitting together. So I think for me it became harder then to lead as well, and also to look after the mental health of your wider team, etc. as well. And your own family. I have 4 kids as well, and they're all dealing with their stuff, so definitely I think it was all very, very much a time of learning. But we shifted, didn't we, very quickly from into a different place and then back again and in. So we were really but yeah, for me with the I find we're more productive. It's not as productive anymore, because we need to have that sit down time together and really fire those questions around the table to each other. But yeah, my goodness, we were all thrown all over the place for the last 2 years, haven't we?
Absolutely. Sarah, how about you? Because I think you have team members as well all over the world, right? And so kind of managing that.
Yeah. I think the biggest we had a couple of challenges. Obviously, our operations team had to remain in, and obviously they had a lot more pressure because of packing the boxes and getting those out. So we had a lot of the practical elements of sort of the sort of distancing and health and safety of people and their concerns coming into the office. I also think as a growing brand, it doesn't have the same benefits quite often as larger brands do or larger companies do, in terms of you're constantly building and evolving that culture. And I think it still is. I'm borderline still sat on the fence to a certain degree with the smaller company, and we're just about to grow quite exponentially in terms of our team. And whereas I think I can totally see the benefit of home working and see the benefit of being remote and tapping into that wider employee pool, at the same time, I think there's a challenge of really finding unique ways to embed your business culture and your business brand into those people when they haven't even experienced the business. And I found that quite interesting with a couple of our team, because when they joined, all we were really doing with the boxes and the corporate gifting. And now we're starting almost like a second wind of learning as they're coming through and going, oh, what do we do about this when this happens? And how do we deal with that? And totally, actually, I was like, yeah, I realize you've actually never seen the business in its original format. So that's been quite challenging, quite sort of just another thing to sort of build on. But I think it does make you work a lot harder to look at how you embrace culture, how you build a brand, and how you build a company built on values, which is ultimately what is so important these days. And how do you do that remotely in a way that engages? Because it can't just be done with sort of corporate gifts and away days. It needs to be sort of more of an inherent system of behaviours almost that you've got to build in, which I think is going to be the next challenge. I think certainly we're seeing that with our corporate clients as well, that they're having to encourage people to come back into the office at least a few days a week to really, again, keep that element of who they work for and what they do, and meeting sort of teammates as well, and to keep that sort of engagement and culture going, really. So I think we've got some more learning to do on that.
Thank you, Sarah. I wonder if you could each share a personal or business mantra that has helped to keep you motivated over the last couple of years. Is there something you go to when you're facing a challenge? Lydia, can I start with you?
Well, there's one I always refer to, and I tell everyone this, which always been a big fan of Coco Chanel, and I always refer back to one specifically, although lots of hers, in that in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. And I always refer to that to so many of the brands I work with, and just for myself, because I think it's so easy when you're scared to just think, well, that's how everyone else does it, so that's got to be the way to do it, and I should just copy what they're doing. It's a lot harder to just go, no, I'm going to completely wipe the slate clean and do things differently. but actually that doing things differently is what actually has been to my benefit, and actually is, I keep going back to it for that reason, that people are looking for things to be a bit different and not to be scared of doing that. But I spend a lot of time just looking on Pinterest at sort of motivational quotes for us to use anyway on our own social media. And I gain from that every morning. I get my Pinterest quotes through of inspirational quotes, and I learn from reading those every morning, because there's tiny little things that just give you that confidence to just be brave and be different and just have a go and not just feel you have to copy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think words of affirmation, we've all learned, have a lot of power, especially when you're not physically connected to people, and we do rely on connection via WhatsApp or video call or whatever, that those positive affirmations actually really do make a difference. Tonya, do you have one?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit similar. So it's about not following trends. I don't like to follow trends, and I don't like to fill the gap in what a consumer wants. I'm totally 100% being authentic and following, what way you want to run it as a founder of a brand. Also turning your negatives into positives. It's kind of, there's times that we've had no's, in the business, but actually they've turned around to yeses maybe a year later. So it's all to do with timing. So I'm one for, don't push it. If it's a no now, don't worry about it. Wait, because it may turn around into a yes.
That's great advice. Thank you. Stella?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I don't know if I have one, but something about feedback, like all feedback is good feedback, and something about experiments, like, on to the next experiment, trial and error, and something about, similar to what Lydia said, that it's a snippet from the Bible. It's for such a time as this, you are here at this point in time to bring yourself to this society because we need you right now. It's no accident that you're here right now. You have something to offer that we all around you need. For example, to make it very tangible, we're doing some weightlifting workshops at the moment, and we're getting a lot of women. And I was like, did we ever say this event was for women only? No, we didn't. Why are we just getting women only? And I'm thinking, Stella, because women right now need it more. So, don't be put off that, there's more women than men coming, because for such a time as this, right now, this is what women need. So just shut up and do it.
That's brilliant. Sarah?
So I think I should adopt Lydia's "Be Brave, Be Different." I like that one. And Stella, there's so many good ideas. I think for me, it's been one of a 24-hour rule that I'm trying to adopt, which is to commiserate or to celebrate and then move on. Because I think too often if we get bad news, it can really sort of affect the rest of the week and really sort of take hold. And actually, it needs not do, and we need to encourage ourselves to move beyond that. And not so much a sort of affirmation as such, but just as something that has been inherent in me for years, just the pursuit of excellence and really making sure that I'm quite a perfectionist. So trying to move it from perfection to excellence is really, really key for me. But 24 hours to commiserate or to celebrate.
I think that's such an important point, because actually, Tonya, that links in really beautifully with what you were talking about, getting no's, because often our no's result in disappointments that can knock us for several days or can ruin a whole week. And just kind of taking a step back, I guess, and reframing that feedback or the no's or the the pushback as maybe it's not right for me right now. Or that's not meant to be the path we're going to take, so we'll follow it, we'll take another tack. So I think that's really important from a mindset perspective for us to just reframe and give ourselves time to give ourselves a hug or congratulations for the things we have achieved, and keep on keeping on, I guess.
I think that was particularly important for me, Michelle, was the celebrating and just being able, because I'm not very good at it.
No, I'm not either.
We've won awards on the evening and somebody's asked me about it the following day and I've already moved on. I'm already into the rest of the week. And actually that's important for your team as well, for you to acknowledge that, you know what, we have done some good work. And you, right back to the beginning, I'm actually going through the Goldman Sachs program at the moment.
Congratulations.
And we're talking about different, yeah, thank you. It's really, really, really good. We're talking about different sort of emotions and leadership, and back to what we started on with the imposter syndrome. And one of the guys actually said, he said, how can you have that when you've got so many awards? And I think half of it is not recognizing the successes that we actually have. So yeah, it's been sort of taking a step back to try and do that.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that you mentioned that in relation to imposter syndrome, because I wrote a piece for the Telegraph a few years back around, you know, how to navigate imposter syndrome. And one of the key tips that was actually given to me by several different female founders was to catalog your wins. Make sure you write them down somewhere so that you've got them to go back and refer to when you are in periods of uncertainty or when you feel like you've had, you know, a knockback of some way or another. Because like you said, we can so very easily forget about everything we've achieved and how far we've come because we don't ever take time to stop and look back. And it's really important in order to chart our progress and how much we've grown. And just like conversations like this are. So thank you so much for being so open and honest, all of you, and sharing. We've actually had one question which I would like to ask you before we wrap up. It was from Eva, and she's asking, how have you effectively managed the creative process virtually in your respective businesses? And I think that might have something to do with sort of how you were talking about, Tonya, getting people around, and that's when your best ideas came of sitting around the table. But how have you each navigated the creative development of your businesses?
Well, for me, I'm very creative, and I'm creating fragrances. I'm always looking for the hands and body, so that hasn't stopped, thankfully, for me in that way. In the creative, it's more because I'm an independent brand, I'm self-financed. There's a blockage in getting it out quickly. Also Brexit, Sarah, you had mentioned as well, and COVID. But in terms of the creativity, yeah, navigate it. It's talking, isn't it, is key. I think communication, getting around the table, talking to people, sharing your fears, sharing, I love what Sarah says, sharing your triumphs. We never did either. And I think creativity comes from that. It used to be if we got in store or we got an award, it would be, the team would go, are you not happy? And I'm like, yeah, move on type thing. But now I have to actually, I think it's important for creativity to accept those times that we've done well. Even if you're a very small brand, I think we tend to feel we don't deserve yet to celebrate, but I think creativity flows. And that's what we've enjoyed actually coming out of lockdown, is that it's taking time away from the desk together. And we only started last week, and whether that's going through meetings away from the desk and maybe going to little local restaurants or bar and just sitting and looking at each other face to face, human to human, because we haven't been able to do that in such a long time.
Thank you. Lydia, did you have anything you wanted to add there? Because I know you've had very much a virtual team that you've had to rely on their feedback to drive the look and feel of your brand forward.
Yeah.
How have you managed that?
In a way, it's been quite good though, because excuse me, our designer that we used was actually somebody, when we were first creating the website, when we were first designing the logos and everything, I was very much reliant on people I knew in the industry to get contacts that I could trust, so I wanted referrals from people. And our designer is based in Brazil, and I think with the way we've adapted now to work with people online and just through Zooms and everything has actually opened up so much. I feel, you don't have, that person that you're working with doesn't have to be in London near us that can sit and have a meeting with us. They can be anywhere in the world. And actually that opens up so much in terms of creativity, because the designer that I work with just totally gets what I want to achieve, and has done from the beginning. And it doesn't matter that she's in a completely different country. She just understood straight away when I gave her a very sort of brief overview and a mood board of what I wanted to create. She just got it instantly. And whenever I want to do anything else, she just gets it. And it's, if anything, this has just taught us that you can have a team from anywhere. And I think that's why, you know, people are moving out of London and doing things from all over now, that you can, certainly in terms of the creative process and working as teams, we have all the facilities to do that now. So we don't need to get together. I mean, I'm somebody that will always love to just get together with people with a glass of Prosecco and just have a real catch up and just sort of brainstorm. And that's usually where the best ideas stem from. But we've learnt, you know, we've got a totally different way of doing it now. So we've learned so much from that. So even though it's not the same, there are lots of benefits that come from it as well. So, you know, things that aren't as good, but things that actually are better from being all in our own destinations. It's as I said, my web designer is in a different part of the UK, my designer's in Brazil. I've got team all over, and it doesn't matter. I haven't had to choose somebody just because they're local to me.
No, I think even just listening to you talk about that, I get like a surge of excitement, because I think it makes the world a really small place, and the potential then to do business anywhere exists for all of us. You know, like, you know, Sarah and Tonya, you guys are doing that already, but it makes new channels of business and new audiences and new ways of doing things far more accessible. And I think that's one of the great advantages that's come out of what, you know, how we've had to change and how we've had to adapt, has been this global economy, really, where we are able to work with people, like you were saying, Lydia, across the world. I mean, my team is also based all over the place, and the women's chapter even has evolved in terms of our audience. We used to be very UK based, and now we have people joining our events and joining our community from all over the world, and it's really, really exciting, which is something I don't think would have happened for us for a very long time, just because of my lack of bandwidth. So yeah, I think I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Thank you, Lydia. Very exciting. Well, we have gone massively over time, but I'm so grateful for all of you. I know that you are busy people, but we've had lots of great comments about growth hacking. We've had Sandra here talking about how what you were saying, Stella, experimentation, that is growth hacking essentially, and learning through trying new things. So thank you all for bringing so much of yourselves and your experience here today. I hope you found the experience valuable. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person at some point. I know that we've got to meet up in May, but it's been really wonderful to see you here all today. And thank you so much for your time. If anyone does have more comments, if you're listening, feel free to keep posting this. I know that this will sit on LinkedIn, but we'll also download this video and upload it to the back end of our website, so it'll be available on the Women's Chapter website for anyone else who wants to go back and watch it and came in halfway through. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Bye, everybody.
You're welcome. Bye.